7 o'clock, we'd like to begin the meeting. If you would all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded, and as we do, we are going to read the mission statement. We are a community of learners known for our unwavering commitment to meeting the needs of all students. Through the adoption of best practices and our active partnership with families and the wider community who are united in supporting the development of engaged, successful, responsible, resilient learners, students will be well prepared to be ethical, empathetic, and contributing citizens. Just a couple things for chairperson's remarks. Reminder that we have suspended our policy for our self-evaluation, which states that it would be done in April. This year we decided that we were going to try and align it with the superintendents. So we will distribute the evaluation forms next month, have them due back in June, and discuss them and report out in August or September. The superintendent's evaluation will be distributed in May, and it'll be a quicker turnaround, probably only 2 weeks to fill it out, and then we will discuss his evaluation in June. Moving on to oral communications from the public. Anybody? I know we have 2 presentations tonight. We'll get to that shortly. Anyone else wish to address the school committee? Thank you. Quickly moving on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Deb. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Maureen. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. So we are going to jump ahead, and since we have our students here, we'll have the student advisory report first, and then we will hear from the students. Olivia?
Spring sports are picking up, and now that the snow has melted, teams like boys and girls lacrosse and the track team are putting the new stadium to good use at practices and games. The nationwide walkout to protest gun violence was scheduled for Wednesday, March 14th, but the event had to be canceled due to the snow day. However, one of Miss Flaherty's English classes did hold their own walkout on the following Thursday. The students had made posters with pro-gun law statements like #Enough and Triton stands with Parkland. April vacation will be from Monday the 16th to Friday the 20th, and many students are planning college tours in order to begin thinking about their future for after Triton. For incoming freshmen, an electives fair was held in the cafeteria on Friday the 6th. From drama and ceramics to engineering, the future students were shown the many possibilities of fun classes that can be taken at Triton. Vaping has been a prevalent issue within Triton, so school administrators are working to make punishment for the act equal to drinking or drug use on school grounds. Many students agree that this is a dangerous habit that they want their classmates to stay away from. Triton's junior prom was Friday, April 6th. The event was planned by junior class officers Allie Hawks, Spiros Markopoulos, Wasif Shaman, Bella Lazinski, Ashlyn Smith, and Olivia Valley, as well as the junior class advisors, Miss Cornell and Mr. McAdams. The prom, hosted at Georgetown Country Club, the Black Swan, went very well. Students enjoyed singing and dancing from 6 to 10. With a photo booth, a buffet-style dinner, and a great DJ, it was a lot of fun. The promenade beforehand was also a great chance for parents to see how much their children had matured for the evening and take lots of pictures. The spring SATs and ACTs will be held soon, and many Triton students are taking the offered classes in preparation for the standardized college acceptance tests. Triton Student Council will be attending the spring meeting for the Massachusetts Association of Student Councils, where students across the state will give speeches and a new president and vice president will be elected for the upcoming 2018 to 2019 school year. Thank you, and please ask any questions.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments? I'm glad to see you guys brought up the vaping issue because we will be addressing that a little later this evening. Moving on to the presentation by our students regarding graduation.
Hi. Hello. Can you hear me? I'm Tyler Jacobs. I'm the student council president. With me is Taylor Penniman, our member at large, and Sydney Accomando, our secretary, and some Oh, and Lily Felford, the vice president, and some other students that are on the committee that helped me work on this. So I'll just read through it, read through the letter, and then touch on the highlights of the other parts of it. So if you want to follow along. To whom it may concern, we, the Student Council Executive Board, on behalf of the Student Council, are once again requesting the reinstatement of not only academic gown decorations and regalia at graduation, but to also include decoration that would include other extracurricular activities that are not necessarily academic. 2 years ago, the Student Council brought this issue before the administration and school council and were unsuccessful in our efforts. In the time spanning then and now, we have thought about issues that were brought up, solutions to those issues, and new criteria that hopefully prove this change successful. The administrative team that was in place when we last pursued this change, of course, had its concerns. One of which was that at the time of graduation, with students that do nothing other than attend school, alongside those that are highly involved, there would be complaints along the lines of, why does that kid look so nice and my kid have nothing on his gown? Another was that with no specific policy or guidelines, a free-for-all would ensue, creating an uncoordinated appearance at graduation. In response to the first matter, we say that by the time a student graduates, they would have had plenty of opportunities to participate if they wished, and they too could have a decorated gown. However, we do not believe in the ideal of everyone should get a trophy. We believe you must work for your accomplishments. Also, in response to the second matter, we have thought about this closely and have drafted a policy and guidelines that would presumably be followed by the various clubs and activities. Since our last effort, we have raised this point of contention multiple times and have had an overwhelming amount of our members, as well as students from across the campus, in support of changing the current policy on this issue. After hearing these requests, we believed that we had to fulfill our mission in speaking on behalf of the entire student body. Triton is a school that without question turns out students with incredibly competitive resumes for a future in the military, the workforce, or at a college or university. This is not just in academics. Here, students are encouraged quite wholesomely to not only invest our time in rigorous homework and academic loads, but also to devote ourselves to one or multiple extracurricular activities, and we do. There is always something for anybody to participate in at this school, between our various and very diverse clubs to our award-winning visual and performing arts, or to our championship sports teams. These activities can range from 2 to 14 hours of time dedicated to an activity, which along with an average of 2+ hours of homework a night is astonishing. Needless to say, the students at Triton are incredibly motivated, involved, intelligent, and overly deserving of recognition in all aspects of student life in high school. Triton never has, and quite frankly never should be, a school where academics are the only point of contention. So we ask you, why should this be the case at graduation? We thank you in advance for considering this matter and offer any assistance we can in implementing this policy. So I'm not sure what order your packets go in, but the next part I'll talk about is the one that says activities lists at the top. So this was just a breakdown of how the different groups would get different recognition. So it would be between stoles, tassels, cords, and pins. The stoles are obviously the biggest and the ones that we have currently. So that's the National Honor Society and the top 10% of the class, or the senior class. And tassels, again, the top 10%. And I think one change that might have happened since this went out to you was the Destination Imagination does not get tassels anymore. They get cords. When I was a part of it, they got tassels, and I assumed incorrectly. So the cords, Foreign Language National Honor Society has them already. And then, so the cords that would be getting added are for the groups that put in what we thought were excessive hours of service. So Student Council, DECA, Destination Imagination now, athletics, and visual and performing arts. At the bottom of the page, it has the different athletic activities and the activities for the visual and performing arts that would be able to have for the cord. And then the pins were for the other clubs and activities that were the, once a week for an hour or a couple hours. So it's a little less, but still recognition. And to the next page with the one that says policy on top. So this is where we dealt with what the administrative team last time we proposed this. So that was 2 years ago. My sophomore year was where they had the most drawback because it didn't have any structure to it, and they didn't want it to have kind of like a no sense of style, or like, every club wanting a stole and every club wanting a cord. And so this was our way to kind of combat that. So at the first point is where the high school guidance department buys the academic pins that we wear already. So that way all the pins would be the same size, and they wouldn't be, like art club has one giant pin and then like something has a tiny one, so they'd be the same size. And then it goes down to say how many years or how much participation you would need to have had to receive a cord or a stole for different activities. And so for this part, what we thought of was a 3-year basis. So in theory, excluding your freshman year, or it in theory could be your sophomore, junior, or senior year, but we figured, your freshman year, it's when you try different things or you see what you don't like. And so for the most part, we based everything on 3 years worth of participation. So just going down the list, marching band, winter guard, and winter percussion would be 3 seasons. The fall play and spring musical would be 6 shows, because we do 2 shows every year. Pit orchestra and drama festival, 3 shows. Athletics was, so there's 3 seasons in a year for athletics, so you had to complete 9 seasons. Student council, 3 years. FLNHS and NHS was completing it through to your senior year. DECA, 3 years. Top 10% is if you're in the top 10%. Destination Imagination, participating through your senior year. And the extracurricular clubs, been an active member for 3 years. And then exceptions we added, which there could be more, could be less. These are just some big ones we thought of. 2 exceptions may be granted to students at the discretion of the advisor who began enrollment at Triton High School past their freshman year. So say, for instance, you came to the high school your junior year and you did marching band both years, so you would, in theory, be able to get a cord if the advisor agreed, because you wouldn't have been able to do the full 3 years. To be considered, the student must be passing 4 core classes, which is something athletics already has to do, so just a nice kind of implementation there. And then clubs, there was some exemptions for the clubs. So if 3 years of participation are not necessary, if the club was created 4 years before the student became a senior, so if you became a senior and the club had only been around for 2 years, then you could get a pin. And 3 years of participation are not necessary if the club was canceled. So same thing, if it, canceled your 2nd year into it. Attendance, this is where we think is one of the bigger points. So being able to prove students were a part of the clubs. And so I know for student council, we take attendance every meeting. If they miss 3 meetings a quarter, then we invite them to our executive board meeting, and we kind of talk to them, see what's going on. And if they aren't going to be participating, then we kindly ask that they step away from student council. So each club is required to have specific attendance, and each club must keep records of their attendance. And then cost, obviously the school doesn't have much money and the budget's very tight. So the cost, the purchasing would have to be done by the individual clubs or departments or whatever. And we just added this one thing that, you know, if students wanted to keep them after graduation, then just reimburse the club for it. And then everything after that are just petitions that we had going around to different advisors and administrators that we presented this to and they agreed with. One name that they didn't get to sign it because it had gone out was Miss Kathy Norton. She's one of the NHS advisors. We did speak and she was in full agreement with this. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Taylor. Anybody have any questions, comments? I have one question, Tyler. Did you investigate what other schools do?
Yes. So surrounding schools, we know Pentucket, or I'm sorry, not Pentucket, Amesbury does pretty much just this. Our student council advisor and their student council advisor are friends somehow, so they kind of were in cahoots there. And Pentucket and Ipswich both do it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Narissa?
So first of all, I want to compliment you on the premise because I think the idea that Triton is not just about academics is a worthwhile one to voice. I did have a couple questions though. Nowhere in here, so you're adding pins. Nowhere in here did I see kind of a guideline as to where pins are going to be worn. Can you address that, I guess? Or?
Right now, at graduation, we have pins for outstanding class members, like academic ones, and there's no real set, like, where to wear them. Most people just wear them somewhere in their just chest area.
Okay. Okay. And on your lists that you had, it looked like a couple of them are counted for both chords and pins. Was that intentional? Looks like marching band is both under pins and chords, and I thought that was another one that I saw in there.
That was the only one.
Okay.
Because so the marching band they give awards to the students that they wear as like ribbons on their uniforms that they wear at graduation, and that's something that they allow right now.
Okay.
Still, so.
And I'm just curious if it came up in your discussion at all, because just having attended the top 10% award banquet a few times, I've seen students bring in mentors from outside of school activities. Did you give any thought if someone comes in and says, I've been horseback riding and it takes 8 hours of my week every week and I've been doing it since I was young, what your response would be?
We did. And our response was just that we wanted to just do this. This was all Triton, like graduation is through Triton. It's obviously great if you do something outside of school, but at graduation you're celebrating what you did in school. So they wouldn't have something for that unless it was a school team or like a co-op team.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
The list of pins that you have in clubs, is that every club that exists in the school?
When I made this list, I got a list of the stipend clubs that the high school has. So I put those in it. I put clubs that are not existent right now but have been in my time at high school. So obviously that list would probably ebb and flow, but this was just kind of just an example of all what clubs could be incorporated.
Can we check with advisors of clubs that aren't on that as well? Some of them thought that their club wasn't dedicated enough.
I think Bird Club made it on.
Mike,
Yeah, they did.
There were several clubs that said that they didn't need the recognition, and then there were other clubs that
This is a question that perhaps I should know the answer to. If someone wants to form any given kind of club at the high school, what is the procedure for that? And is that club get sanctioned or endorsed by?
That'd be.
Yeah.
Wow, they stepped away pretty
That's why I came.
No, so students bring clubs to our attention all the time. So we go through, what's the purpose of the club. We certainly don't want to discourage any club, but we want to see what the purpose is of the club, whether it's educational or entertainment. And then we need a space for the club. So that's always the first issue. Another issue is an advisor for the club, and is there money in the budget to pay the advisor? So then I would go and propose that, and if we do have money, then we'd start a club. We've started, I can't tell you, we've started quite a few clubs in the last just couple of years, and those are the procedures that we usually go through. And I just want to say that we want students to do this. We want our students to go through this process and be responsible adults. This is amazing what they've done. They started this months ago. They came to me right away. I told them that eventually they'd have to go to Superintendent Forget and the school committee, and they said that's fine. They met with the administrative team. We sat with the guidance department as well. School council approved this. They gave 2 tremendous presentations to our school council group, and then when it was all said and done, they said, they met with myself. And no, I think it was just me. It was you and Tyler met with myself in my office, and I said, now you take it to the big guns, and then we'll get you on the agenda. I'm just so impressed with them. They did such a wonderful job. So.
Just to clarify, so if a club would be recognized at graduation with a pin or
it would be a sanctioned club by the school.
Right, and so it would have to be something that was brought to you and approved, right. And then also, as you mentioned, the club and the advisor would have to feel that it was something that had enough. Right. All right, thank you.
Maureen?
I just wanted to add that I wanted to compliment you on your proposal. I think it was a fantastic proposal, and I really believe that Triton puts out graduates that are very well-rounded, and it's more than just academics or just athletics. So I compliment you on your proposal, and I'm fully in support of doing this. So.
Nice job. So can we have a motion to approve the proposal as written for the implementation of
I just have.
ahead.
No. Should this go to the policy committee? Is this a policy? Is this going to be a policy?
I think.
I would say it technically is a policy, yes. It's tweaking an existing, I don't know if this exists in your policy manual. It's a practice that's been in play for many years, and it's a tweaking of that. So I would say 2 things. Yes, not a bad thing to codify in policy, given the time sensitivity of seniors standing before us who would like to take advantage of this. I would say to have it be delayed in policy subcommittee would not be a good thing. Perhaps you provisionally approve that to be implemented this year, refer it to policy, and then we can formally policyise it and make sure it has all the right.
Policy can be done by the full committee anyway.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to go through subcommittee, but if it, I agree, if we want to vote on it tonight, and then if policy subcommittee wants to look at it again and tweak it or whatever, then that's perfectly acceptable, but.
And I would say bring it to, with our MASC review,
Right.
There's got to be some file
especially
number
if Amesbury
that
or somebody else
matches.
has done it.
Right,
Yeah.
so we can figure out where it plugs into the manual and review it formally.
Yep.
But I would recommend it's approved
I was just going to
tonight.
ask can people on do you think you want to see this on policy?
I think it should be, because I think we should add decorating because I don't think there's any thing that they can't put on their caps either.
There's
As far as like literally decorating, not
Right, so I
decoration,
think
but decoration?
Yeah.
Right. The hat and the gown and everything should be all part of policy, so that.
so there's policy that says they can't decorate the hat?
No. There's
Oh.
nothing that says.
Oh,
that's
okay.
So
okay,
if we're
'cause I
going to say we're going to do a policy for the gowns and the pins, why not the hat too? That.
Look at it all.
Mm.
Yep. So I think we should approve it now
Yeah.
or vote on it anyway.
I'll make a motion to conditionally approve the proposal brought by the high school student council concerning awards and decorations for club participation. There we go.
Thanks, Deb. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Maureen. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you all, and again, great job. The next presentation we'll have is for the French exchange program.
Good evening, bonsoir. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. Many of you have opened your homes to French students in the past and sent your children abroad. Thank you as a committee for supporting this and the administration for supporting this enriching experience for our students. I know you have a very busy agenda tonight, so we're going to try to be as short as possible. But I would like to open before our wonderful students speak to you a little bit about their experience with a quote that you have in your packets on the second page. At their heart, foreign exchange programs are about opening minds, seeing things in a new way, and looking at old problems in a fresh light. They are about realizing that our way is neither necessarily the best nor the only way to handle a certain situation. They allow students to learn from their peers, not just from across town, but from across the planet, across cultures, and across history. With that, I would like to introduce to you three students.
Going on the exchange trip, it made something an opportunity that I wouldn't be able to get anywhere else or in any other program. So it definitely is something kind of life-changing that you can only do once. So, Rachel or Anthony?
Bonsoir et je vous remercie pour permettre cet échange de prendre place. I would like to thank you for allowing this exchange to take place for so many years. I did it last year along with Owen and Rachel, and my brother, my little brother, is participating in it next year. He's currently communicating with his French exchange student, and this exchange has really opened my eyes, and it was really one of the major things that made me decide, like, I want to continue learning French. I want to continue learning languages. I want to continue learning about the world, making bonds, and just exploring. And it really opened my eyes to, wow, there's a lot more out there. And it exposed me to a culture that I've learned in our books, but I'm like, okay, here I am right now. I learned about that supermarket right over there. And just all the history and stuff, it really comes to life. It immerses you in the language, and I think that's really beneficial for anyone who is planning on studying French in the long term, or even if they even if they aren't planning on studying, oh, I want to make a career out of this, just to expose themselves to the wider world out there, to expose them to how other people and other cultures live, to build a better understanding of the world around us in our increasingly global society. And I can't stress how important this is to me, but also to Madame and everyone else here, that you allowed us to do this for so many years. Thank you.
I don't have much to add. If I could add one thing, I think it's mainly the connection. So it's a year later, and I'm still talking to my French exchange student every day. I think it's very important to have connections all over the world, especially when it can get you new job opportunities you can revisit, like Owen is. I just think it's something that we can't lose as Triton, because it's a huge part of foreign language for both French and Spanish.
Rachel is pretty shy about her French. She just wrote a thank you note without a single error, and I really have to share it with you because it's so beautifully written. And also, again, in thanks to your approval of this exchange for so many years, I received an email from Madison Williams this morning, and it was delightful. I'll just share that with you. Madame, I hope this message finds you well. I have some very exciting news. I will be screening my short film at the Cannes Film Festival in May. I wanted to reach out and thank you for your influence over me in high school. My knowledge of France and the French language advanced my opportunities academically, professionally, and my ability to interact with the international students at Clemson, not to mention prepare me for the most prestigious film festival in the world. Thank you so very much for your hard work. I leave for Paris May 1st and will train to Cannes on May 5th and would love to send you photos along the way. The festival's last 2 weeks. I can barely wait. And if you know Madison, I can just hear her saying, I can barely wait. And here's the link to my short documentary, which I have asked her permission to share. So I will if you would like that. And I know that you're all very familiar with the exchange. I wanted you to have this in writing, and I especially appreciate your support of this exchange after some of the unfortunate, tragic terrorist attacks that we've had in the past. It really, I cannot tell you how important that is to all of us to have the support of our community. So thank you again, and I thank you for approving seeking interest at the last, in February. I wanted to just briefly share that with you. And I do have a PowerPoint to share about experiences from the past. I don't know how long you have, so I'm going to ask Brian to just kind of give me a signal.
Uh-oh, I'm in charge. That is unfair pressure. You could just say, Madame, that is unfair pressure.
So far, we have 13 families already. This is the first year that my colleagues in France shared the student packets in February. The packets that you have are from prior years, but I do currently have the new students, if anybody's interested in seeing those. And I also can share that with you from my Google Drive. All of those students are in the drive for the exchange. So if anybody would like for me to share that with you, you can have that. And you can also see what our students have done. Sarah Harrington. So this was something I thought you may be interested in seeing. I'm not very good at which of the following options, now this is students, which of the following options, originally this year, it was the first year, this is the other reason I proposed this again, it was the first year I decided to offer an option, and I thought, thank you. I thought that it may be interesting to a lot of people to have something at a lower cost and flying directly to Nantes and staying with the families for 2 complete weeks, as the French students do when they come stay with us. And they have that at a much lower cost, and a lot of times they request our families to take them to New York because they don't pay for that trip to New York. And I will not organize a trip to New York on top of the 6 other field trips that we do during their stay. What I didn't expect was to see quite so much of a split. The blue is the upgraded hotel, which is not, was not extremely popular. The traditional Paris, as we've always had it, was most popular. The 25.5% of parents who chose the third option were very vocal. And I actually spent more time than I really expected communicating with them, and I'm very thankful to students and parents who have experienced this before, including Lee Lentz, Anthony's mom. Thank you very much for your support in sharing this. The choice was Paris. It was kind of an overwhelming majority if you look at the 12.7 and 61.8%. However, in the future, I will not be offering options. The final result is traditional Paris. The only change is, and I do have a final itinerary, which I will also bring a stack of for you at the end of the meeting. And that's also in the drive. The only difference on the itinerary is that the first 2 nights are in the hotel in Paris, and then we go to the families. The final day we will be spending in Paris. Reason being, on the last trip, and kids, I don't know if you remember this, I tried to make it so that you wouldn't have noticed quite as much, but there was a change in our flight, which put us very, very close getting from the train to Charles de Gaulle Airport. And I like to get there at least 3 hours in advance, if not. And so I printed our tickets out the night before, and I let the kids know we really have to move. And of course, they're always wonderful. We did, and I had somebody at the airport. I had alerted somebody at the airport, and I had Expenditures alert somebody at the airport that we needed to get through very quickly. And they allowed us ahead of a lot of other people, and we just had one area to go for us students. But I never want to relive that again. We will be spending our last day in Paris because we'll be close, and then we'll take the bus to the airport. This is just to give you a sense of what goes on during the exchange. I'll go through these kind of quickly to speed it up a bit. Just if you were curious to know where La Roche-sur-Yon is, it's in the Loire Valley, southwesternmost part on the coast. It makes for a very nice exchange for us. The Vendée Globe takes place there. You recognize some faces in the pictures. This is a park that has been nominated the best park in the world. So this day is, of course, entirely in French, and each of the stations tells about a different part of French history. This is the school, Saint-François d'Assise, and you'll sort of virtually meet the principal, Monsieur Potier. He's been here, I think, in 2010. So I can send this to you if you would like to watch more. Christopher and Liam on the left wanted to come tonight, but they had a track meet. These are just some of the pictures with families. Rianne Vatcher's dad, Bob Vatcher, has been a volunteer tour guide when the French are here, and although Rianne is graduating, I did reach out and ask him if he would do so again this coming year, and he said yes. I host a teacher while families are hosting students. So on a weekend, when students were with their families and the teacher was with us, I live in Gloucester, so we went for a little walk in Dogtown. These are the French families. When we arrived, they had a welcome party, and that is them with their students and children. This was a welcome party held here at Peter Hall in Plum Island. They love their football shirts. As the French love soccer. You will see the Gua in the Tour de France this summer. It's taking off right there. Okay, thank you. I can send this to you if you would like. You can just send me an email. And good night. Thank you.
You need to approve this.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you, students, for coming tonight to share your experiences. We do appreciate it. We need a motion to approve the French exchange program, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the French exchange program to France with visits from 23 students to Triton in October 2018 and 23 Triton students traveling to Paris and La Roche-sur-Yon, France in April 2019.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Second it. Thank you, Linda. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you. Merci mille fois.
Thank you, Madame, and students for coming.
Thank you very much. All right, now getting back to the agenda. Anybody have any new business you want to raise tonight for a future meeting? Okay, moving on to reports and deliberations. The District Communications Committee, we met March 22nd. It was not a well-attended meeting. Basically, the minutes are in the, or the meeting notes are in the packet, but for those who were not there, it was, like I said, not very well attended. We will be working on the landlord-tenant piece of it, correct, Mr. Forget?
Yes, so we will, at the May meeting, we'll bring the landlord-tenant language that has been agreed with the small working group, and then also look to set up a task force to look at alternative funding, not a funding, alternative assessment methodologies. So I know Selectman Ronnie Ray Parrott has taken that on and has spoken with the other towns, and we're hoping that by that May 22nd,
Second,
4th?
yeah, 24th.
Meeting, that towns will have representatives ready to go, so we can jump back into that discussion, not during budget season.
Correct. Great. Moving on, alternative structured learning days, the blizzard bags as they are sometimes called.
Yes, so I'm going to pass this over to Kimberly Croto. Again, this was a request last month, or maybe 2 months ago, about, the question was, what are blizzard bags, by the way? And so this is not intended to be an extensive presentation, but just to give you a sense of what the opportunities are.
So alternative structured learning days are a broad sense that are used to define learning opportunities that happen outside of the classroom that meet certain regulations or standards that are set forth by the Department of Ed. There are many surrounding towns that are looking into or have piloted alternative structured learning days. I think one of the most common names out there that people have referred to it as blizzard bags. And the concept is that when there is weather or some type of situation where the students are not able to attend school, that these structured learning activities will count towards one of the required or learning days or hours. So we have heard mixed reviews for some of the districts who have implemented such alternative structured learning day programs, and I think a couple of the issues are the amount of parent involvement that these particular structures require, the technology piece that are required. So if you have students who do not have access to a computer or the internet, that seems to be some problems associated with that. The other piece is still, I think, which is even the bigger one for me, is about making sure that it really fits into our mission that we provide instruction through the adoption of best practices. And we're just still not sure, with so many lingering questions around the use of these alternative structured learning days, we are ready to go forward. I think we have talked to surrounding districts and the principals, and there are still a lot of unanswered questions. So I don't know, Brian, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I would say that in speaking with other superintendents, other parents that have been on either end of the, again, alternative learning, structured learning days. So again, the structured learning is the 180-day, 990 hours. That's the requirement. We'll talk about that in a second in regards to this year. But there's certainly concerns about, is it really a valid day of learning? And that's my concern, is if we're going to call this one of our 180 days and part of our 900 or 990 hours of learning, then I'm not yet convinced. I'm actually quite convinced it's not. But until we're ready to make a proposal to the contrary, I don't see it as a viable option. Certainly there are districts who have taken a more measured approach and said, okay, we'll schedule our 5 required snow days. If we get to day 6, 7, 8 and 9, as we had this year, then we'll consider some kind of pilot. But if that's a way we wanted to go and the committee desired to go, then I'd want to have some really detailed discussion about what that structured learning looks like. As Kim mentioned, so there's certainly the access issues, so the students who don't have access to technology, but there's also students students with disabilities who would either be unable to access the curriculum as they need to, or literally missing services that we are required to provide, and we get into providing compensatory services. So there's certainly lots more, in my mind, I think it's a fair statement, I have a whole lot more questions than I do ready to go answers. So certainly, I'm hoping that we don't have a repeat of this year anytime soon, but we never know. But I think if we were talking about these types of days in the context of distance learning, as we had talked about in our district strategy Wakefield looked into, and an overall concept of distance learning over the summer, during the school year, and for snow days, then that's a different discussion, but we're not there yet. That's a much, much, much larger discussion. So that was our intention, just to give you a little snippet and certainly answer any questions that you may be hearing. I'm sure you've heard from parents. I know I have.
Linda?
One of the questions that I think would arise would be some of the days that were off were because people didn't have lights.
Exactly.
So if
Yep.
you had blizzard bags, I mean, some students may not even be able to see to do those. So that would have to be a consideration as well.
Absolutely. Yep. And that could be a case-by-case basis. We could say today is day 6, or today is not day 7, it's a blizzard bag or whatever other. I would come up with something creative like learning backpack, or I don't know. Come up with something that actually makes more sense. Definitely don't try it on the fly. Note to self, don't try that again. Yeah, we could make that determination, and if we knew 90% of the town was without power, then certainly it's just a closed day.
Or the blizzard bags could have lanterns or flashlights.
There we go.
Survival bags.
So
That's right. Survival bags.
So we're going to also set a budget for that.
Maureen?
I just wanted to add, I spoke to a parent the other day from the Timberland School District in New Hampshire, and they do blizzard bags, and they've been doing them for a number of years. Started the first year as a pilot, but they've had 10 snow days this year, but some of those have been days without power, so their kids are still going to the 22nd of June, even with the use of blizzard bags.
Yep.
So, but she did speak very highly of the program. She has a child she has 2 children. One of her children is on an IEP. So I asked her how she thought that worked, and she felt that it was good. I mean, that he did well with and the students had a certain amount of time to make up to do the work. It's not like it's due the next day they get back to school.
That certainly can be.
Their teachers were all available during those days, and of course, provided that they have power. But she did speak very positively of the program.
So I would say, ironically, I spoke to a parent from Timberlane who had the complete opposite perspective.
Okay, well, there you go.
It was a she, and she basically did all the work because there was no way. The student didn't know, younger student, didn't know what to do, so if it had to be completed. What I've heard from a lot of parents who are on that, who have experienced it, and again, there are those certainly who support it, and I believe mostly what I've heard is the ones who support it are the ones who would have 15 days, so they're very happy that they don't have that many days, but that it's a lot of work, and it's for a student who might not necessarily be self-motivated, it puts the burden on the parent. And if that's my concern, is if it's our job to educate 180 days, 990 hours, we can't be shifting that burden.
And that's also to assume that the parent is going to be home and available to help.
This was a very invested and involved parent, yes.
That still have to work on snow days.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And also if the parent understands what the work is.
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
All right. So
if we can just take an item out of order, that's a couple down. Well, I guess it's actually under general action items, so maybe we shouldn't take that out of order. But we can, because I'm not going to have you do any action. So in regards to our current year, I'm able to report to you that the commissioner did approve the relaxing of 2 days. However, there was not, there was a very subtle yet deliberate slapping of the wrist to say, next time plan better. And there isn't a relaxing of the 900 or 990 hour requirement. At the middle school and high school, we are right on the threshold. And I think that because what the proposal was is to not have the last 2 days of school on the 25th and 26th, use 2 half days in May, extend those days, better time, obviously in May, students are going to be more focused, as will teachers be. But it's really only adding 6 hours, so we're losing 6 hours, and that puts us right at the cusp of not making the requirement. On top of that, there are issues with work schedules for any per diem employees. There are issues with tuitions that are based, for example, full day K, that are based on a 180-day school year, where we would have to reimburse for 2 days because it would be a 178-day school year. So there were a lot of things that arose as we unpacked that possibility. And at the end of the day, I'm here to recommend to you tonight that we leave it alone. The last day of school is Tuesday, June 26th. Absolutely will be an understanding both for employees, there are teachers who will have conflicts, as well as families that will have conflicts, that if it's an absence and the family has a reason, there were students already enrolled in camp, then they will certainly talk about excused absences. But to do anything other than a much more complicated plan, I think we're not able to meet the time on learning. So with that said, my recommendation is to take no action tonight, to leave the calendar as it is. The 2 half days in May remain half days, and we land on Tuesday the 26th. My understanding is the majority of schools will be out in the area by Friday the 22nd. They're potentially Boxford, potentially Ipswich is working on a plan. They're actually on the last day as us, the same last day, the 26th, and they're working on a proposal to actually add time to every day, which is obviously something we would have to negotiate. So that's a much more complicated, something I didn't want to take. I don't think that works because that disrupts everyone for the balance of the school year. So my recommendation is that we leave it alone. The last day of school is Friday, Tuesday, June 26th.
Okay. Want to move on to your, oh, yes, sorry.
Can I just make a comment?
Absolutely.
I just want to reiterate what I brought up the last time we discussed this, and for the, I guess, the elementary schools and the middle school as they plan the recognition ceremonies, if they
Yes.
can be planned, 22nd, 21st, something like that. Because I know there'll be a lot of kids that will miss out on those
Absolutely,
ceremonies.
yes. So we talked about everything from adjusting when grading closes to those ceremonies, the 6th grade recognition, middle school. We talked about having those the prior week before we know we're going to be missing potentially staff and students. Yes, and we will finalize those details and let everyone know.
Okay, your monthly report, please.
My monthly report is very brief, if and when I can find it. So I took number 1. As far as the NEASC delay, that was approved. Just to report to you that the commission did approve a 1-year delay, which means the collaborative conference will now take place rather than this month. It will take place a year from now in the spring of 19. That date hasn't been set explicitly. And the visit would be in the spring of 2021, which allows the high school to continue the work this year, aligning the school improvement plan with the 5 NEASC goals, and then have that prepared as the formal school improvement plan for what will be the fiscal 20 budget cycle in January of 19. Just to let you know that we did file and have approved a waiver request. It was initially to have a 7th and 8th graders play boys tennis because of low numbers. There was also a request for another co-op, and it's actually Newburyport students playing for Triton. So we do have 3, at last count it was 3 Newburyport students playing under the blue and Viking, which always makes us proud. And just to confirm, Pine Grove is rolling. If you drive into the parking lot now, you see that barrier, the water erosion control down the side of the driveway. There's construction trailers out back. The cafeteria is officially, it's not closed, but it's officially emptied. Food is being prepared here in this campus, trucked over daily. Half the gymnasium is a gym, half the gymnasium is the cafeteria. So the goal was this week to dry run, test everything out, make sure it works before they actually tear into the cafeteria. And so, knock on wood, day 1 went perfectly. Day 2 went better. Day 3 went great. So far so good. Certainly not serving hot lunches, so it's not the same. But certainly hats off to folks at Pine Grove, Chris Nalen, the entire crew, the custodial crew, the cafeteria crew, and then the cafeteria crew over here, and Chris Walsh, in that they accepted the whole Pine Grove cafeteria crew, and they're working in tight quarters and doing a great job. So huge thanks to them for making that as seamless as it could be. So again, to confirm, as of I think Saturday now, that was the latest I heard, they weren't even going to wait till Monday. As of this Saturday, the all-purpose room, backstage, and cafeteria, which is the all-purpose room, and the kitchen, that whole area gets confiscated, cordoned off, and construction begins. There will be construction outside, so if you go by and go through, they will be digging trenches and running conduits and cables for cable and electrical access. And then on the last day of school, the school will officially completely close down. Chris Nealand, some of the office staff will move over to here for the summer and function as best we can out of another location, trying to get as many of the files as we'll need or as they'll need into this location. That's part of the construction move, and that campus goes to town. So by September 1st, the office suite, the whole main entry, all-purpose room and kitchen is completely brand new and functioning. So that's been a promise. Walter McLeod, the site superintendent, it will be ready for the first day of school. And then just to let you know that we are continuing the review of safety protocols. Again, it's a reaffirming of other protocols that we have and the addition of that armed intruder, an active shooter that is certainly throws a wrinkle into the traditional plan. So we still are on track to hopefully later this spring be able to have staff training and, depending on how we believe the student body is ready, active drills. But that's still it's a very sensitive subject, and it's a very sensitive thing to do, especially when anxiety is high. So I'll keep you abreast of how that proceeds. So any other questions, certainly feel free to ask.
Does anybody have any questions for the superintendent on his report? Okay, moving on to the FY19 operating budget,
Okay,
Plan
so
B thinking.
Yes, so there is no piece of paper in front of you tonight. Actually, I've spoken with some folks who did not want to talk, not at this table, actually members of town officials who don't want to talk about a Plan B because they believe that right now people need to assess the option in front of them. There is a very active campaign to get the budget approved as is, but if that fails, we do have to be ready on May 16th. That is 5 weeks from tonight. And we will have for you a Plan B ready to go if necessary. Currently, we're working on the number which was roughly 900, the Plan B that we proposed to you on March, not proposed, but provided as just from some context on March 14th, reduced another 907,000. We're working on that $900,000 to $1 million in reductions. We're in the 800s, and we're at 20 FTEs that would be reduced. It is a mixture of both operational and instructional staff. So far, I'm pleased that there have not been any wholesale impacts on programs being removed. There are some positive trends, and again, I don't even want to say them out loud because we don't know for sure, but there are some positive trends we saw today on state aid. A little tick here, $10 more per pupil on minimum aid, maybe another $15,000 on regional transportation, but there's going to be a very large push for regional transportation. So maybe we gained about 45,000 today. There's some promising news for special education transportation that we should be able to confirm by May 16th if that were to pan out. So there were some changes that were not, that are things continuing, whether revenues or expenditures, continuing to trend in the right direction, adding to that ability to have it at 20 currently. Again, I'm not gone back and forth, lots of different discussion about what do we do tonight, and I don't think there's any action to take tonight. Certainly if there's anything that as a committee you want to discuss, provide guidance, provide information, provide us with any feedback in regards to giving us guidance about where you would want that figure to come in. Certainly willing to have that discussion, but there's nothing official that we're proposing to you tonight.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
Thoughts? Suggestions?
I think we're doing what we can do.
Okay.
I think you're looking at possibilities if we need to come
Yes.
to that, and I think that's the best we can do at this point.
Absolutely. And there's unequivocally impact. With the budget finalized as it is, with the reductions at the high school, again, they weren't dismantling programs. We make it work, but there's absolutely impact. So I think that people need to hear that. There's no way that a Plan B doesn't have significant impact.
Absolutely. So that leads us to the next item on our agenda, which is the letter to the House and Senate Ways and Means chairs. Do you want to take that, Narissa, since that came from Finance?
Sure. So we're actually stealing this from Mendon Upton. This is not something we created. Mendon Upton Regional School District signed a letter that was similar to this, advocating for some very specific increases. We've updated this a little bit. This wasn't, they didn't include the Senate Bill 217 line item, the bullet that's at the very bottom, and of course updated it with our numbers. But the idea is to simply send a request from the school committee to the chairs of the House and Senate Ways and Means Committee, letting them know that these are high priority for us. The House Ways and Means released their budget today. Many of these, there were, like Brian, as the superintendent said, the minimum per pupil increase came in at $30 a student over the $20 from the governor. The regional school transportation line item came in $1 million higher, so it's still about $23.5 million short of the full funding. I spoke to Representative Hill today. He confirmed that he will be filing an amendment to put that to 100% funding of the regional transportation line item. And as soon as that goes, I will let you know what the amendment number is. Circuit breaker was actually brought to a level that Representative Hill believes is about 72% already, so a good increase, but we need to keep it there. Foundation budget review had some action, but not what we would like to see, I think, for a long-term plan. Senate Bill 217, or the language behind that, was not included in the House Ways and Means budget that was released today. But Amendment 31 was filed by Representative Ferguson from, she represents Wachusett and a couple of other districts. And that is something else that we can definitely be talking with our representatives about and asking them to support as time goes on so that we can get a review on the regional district funding and governance, and hopefully get some recommendations made beyond what the auditor's report had, so that we can hopefully get some action in that direction. So the request would be to approve sending this letter and get the signatures from our members so that we can send that off to the chairs of the House and Senate Ways and Means.
And can I just add, because Narissa won't toot her own horn, but there's momentum this year unlike any year. So this is my 13th year in the central office, and there is definitely a momentum, and social media certainly plays a big impact or a big piece of that impact. But between the Support Mass Regional Schools and the Friends of Triton, but that Support Mass Regional Schools is how many members now?
I think 1,140 last time I
So over 20, how many regions?
Yeah, I think we're up above 30, 35.
So you've got 60% of the regional schools in the state somehow involved, and it doesn't mean there's 100 people, but there's a connection with 60%. So there are years when you do this and it's a rote task and it's important to do, and there are years when this gets signed and mailed and posted and hashtagged and retweeted, and they're listening because they can't not listen when it gets that big. So,
I just have to
phenomenal job, Narissa.
Thank you. I have to compliment our legislators too, because they have been behind this 100%. Yep. Senator Tarr's office sent out another statement again today, just basically backing up the items that are in this, and Senator Tarr's letter of support that he circulated that got 54 signatures, I think. Yep. And now that we have kind of a cohesive group with Support Mass Regional Schools, we've been actually able to go out and contact chairs of school committees and superintendents, and some of the reaction has just been phenomenal. People saying, what can I do? Gateway Regional School District, their superintendent literally took the email that I sent him and blasted it out to all the staff in their school district. And then we were able to go to their senators and representatives out there, and they literally CC'd me on emails so that I was able to go in with this kind of warm discussion directly with their senators and representatives and tell them what we would like to have happen, and that's been amazing. So kudos to them as well.
When I was at a meeting in Marlborough, and the video that was shot by SCTV, that people fast forwarded through the first part to get to the presentation by the We Are Triton folks. But everyone was saying, I saw that video you were in. I'm like, how in the world did you see the video from SCTV in little old Salisbury? But even that, I mean, you put the hashtag, you put support Mass Regional Schools, and it is amazing the traction those things are getting. So this is the year to send this letter.
That's right. So do we have a motion to approve? Go ahead, Deb.
Well, no, it's part of the discussion, probably.
Well, do you want to make the motion? Then you can start the discussion.
Oh, okay. I'm going to make a motion that we sign and endorse the 2 letters in front of us to send to the House, Senate chairs.
Do we have a second, please? Thank you, Dan. All right, Deb?
I do this every time. Is there a reason why our towns are listed? And Paul doesn't have a town, but just.
It's on the clean copy.
Oh.
It's formatted.
But is there a reason why our towns should be listed? Just asking.
When the superintendent and I were discussing this, we actually discussed this very point. And the only reason it's here is because Mendon Upton had it on here. And I mean, we can absolutely take it off, but we went back and forth and just said, it's kind of what's there already.
Pretty cool, so we want to be like them, so that's why we did it.
I could offer one reason, Deb, why. It's because we represent these towns, and these towns are represented by several other legislators.
But that's not true. We don't represent just these towns.
It's suggesting, though, that these towns, though, are represented by several different legislators. But
I've just been on this committee years and years and years and years and years, too many years, and we've always tried to not have the segregation of the towns. So that's why I'm asking.
It's a fair point,
yeah,
but I think
easy to take off.
Yeah, we could take it off, but I think what Dan's trying to say is that not as a resident of Newbury, I don't have the same representation as somebody that you do in Salisbury, and that when this goes to the Senate chair and the House chair, they might not know who Triton is, who we represent. So it gives them some context. Normally, I would agree with you 100%. I don't like to see us segregated by towns, but I think in this case, it might give them some more insight as to we are a region, we are all signing this together, this is impactful. But if the committee wants that taken off, we certainly could.
I agree with you, Dina. I think that in this case, it's important, but I also agree with Deb that in other incidences, it's not okay to have our towns, because we are trying to show that we work for all 3 towns. But in this case, I do think it's important.
Anybody else have a strong feeling one way or the other? Would you be horribly offended if we have the copies tonight to sign that do have our towns
No,
listed?
I'm not horribly offended. I don't completely agree. I don't want to belabor this. This is a wonderful thing, and we should certainly sign it and send it off as quickly as possible. But just because I live in Salisbury, it doesn't mean that I couldn't call Brad Hill,
Oh, well, that's absolutely
you know,
true.
and talk to him, because I don't think that any of our representatives would say, well, you live in Salisbury, so, you know.
No,
that's
but,
it. I understand what you're saying. Just,
well, and I was also going to say, you
I
could
actually
reach
don't
out
have
to
a
other
strong
states.
feeling about
Right.
it one way or the other. And it's actually not my point. I do have a point I want to make, but we can get through it after we.
but, no, I mean, I'm happy to sign it the way it is and get it out of here.
All right,
Just
I
get it
think,
going.
you know, to make it easier, if we don't all sign it, we can get it, we could do two, I don't care, but what's the point you wanted to make, Dan?
Well, just that, well, first of all, Brian's right, and Narissa, this is great work. And I think that for the first time, we can actually start seeing light at the end of the tunnel when we look to the state. But we have some real important things ahead if we are actually going to see real results in this particular budget cycle. And it's to get beyond, to use the platform that social media is, to get beyond that and to recognize we've got the Mask Day on the Hill, very important this year, very, very important. Because what has to happen now is we actually have to put people in front of those offices. And when I went to the Mask Day on the Hill in the past, and the groups that get in to see the important people up there are those that are able to bring students with them. And the students, especially this year, are going to be able to help really make an important point. Folks are listening to students for good reason, because of what happened in Florida and whatnot. We saw it tonight. It's very, very important that we actually put the people in front of the folks up there on the Hill. And that, I think, will maybe achieve results this year and then maybe build the foundation for a big fix starting next year. That would be my point. It really, we have to now bring this home. And the way it's going to be brought home is if we can make an impact actually up there.
Absolutely.
And calls and all the follow-up that's necessary to because we saw the folks who came on that stage and said they want to help, and they're all producing that now, but now it has to get beyond them to the folks of real power, these folks that.
Right, they need our help to support their initiatives, absolutely. Any further discussion on this letter? All in favor? Any opposed? It is unanimous. So the letters will be here to sign tonight. We've already covered the snow days, the alcohol substance abuse policy summary.
So you have this in your packet. I don't know if you would like to share something, Tim, or if I'm happy to do a summary.
I could join. We could.
You're here, you waited. Thanks for coming and waiting.
I told Brian before, the older I get, the more I enjoy these meetings. But I do. This goes back to last year. So vaping, we had a presenter today to come in and talk about opioid dependency and, you know, the devastation that it's done to our community. And she also brought up vaping in her presentation. I've been getting many emails from parents, and thankfully so. They've really been doing due diligence with their children to talk to them about what's going on. And the kids have been saying, Mom, Dad, we're sick of it. Students have been coming to me, Mr. Jerry, we're sick of it. They've been going to Catherine and Scott and Megan Ober and Sean. We're sick of it, we're sick of it. We can't go in the bathroom. Kids are vaping in classes, and they're doing it behind the teacher's back. We've really been spending a lot of time literally hiding in the halls, waiting in bathrooms. I mean, spending an inordinate amount of time. So I've been going to my principals groups. Every month we have a meeting. Some months I can't get there because we have other obligations here. But one of the things that came up in one of the groups, because I asked to have it put on the agenda, was what's your policy? And a lot of the schools, it was Andover High. Phil Conrad and I have, my son is at Andover, you know, so I got to know him a little bit through that, but mainly through this group, and that's what started our relationship. And he said, well, we put it under 37H, 37H and a half. But if you read his policy and you read our policy in our handbooks, the only thing that's left out of ours, and I think you've seen both, because Catherine took the policy from the Andover High handbook and kind of put Triton on it, and Phil gave us permission for that. He said, totally. There's 13 other schools that have borrowed our policy, and because a lot of them didn't have it under drug and alcohol use. So basically, it was the same as us, just a fine. But now we want to do suspensions combined with that. And going into the prom season, and with all the things that happened during prom season and senior week, we went to Brian and said, you know, can you take a look at this for us? Can you see, you know, I'm obviously going to bring it to school council. That's one of our functions. We're going to look at the student handbook. We're going to go through this, and then whatever changes we make to school handbook we'll give to you, and then you can set it as policy going forward. But for this year, we wanted to add suspension to, the suspension usually is the third offense. In Andover, it's suspension is, you know, like you do this, you're suspended. So basically, all we're asking is that, you know, for the remainder of the year, until we can go through all of this with school council, on the first offense, we want to be able to suspend.
In the big, just to clarify, so this really, even though it's an Andover document that got kind of repackaged as Triton's, the major change is that our policy doesn't speak about vaping.
Right.
So it's really more of a summary, but as we talked about it, we thought, you know what? It doesn't conflict with our policy, but lest there be any doubt, if you see the document, you approve it, it's officially policy, and then I think then we need, I'm not sure if we've reviewed this one yet. I know we talked about this, I know you and I had a discussion with the handbooks, but I think this is coming up in J, I believe. Have a formal process to go through the policy in its due course with Mike Gilbert and MASC. But for the time being, this doesn't conflict and just kind of repackages in a nice one-pager that can easily be handed out to everyone. And then adds in vaping, which, again, like Tim said, needs to bring it to the school council. But if there is anyone that wants to argue and say that this shouldn't include vaping, I would like to have a meeting with that person because they have their head way in the sand. So, and just to confirm one more time, we had the opioid forum that Representative Hill sponsored 2 weeks ago now. Great presentation. Unfortunately, there were about 15 panelists and there were about 15 people in the audience. But after a wonderful presentation, including the State Commissioner of Health, it quickly turned to all about vaping. And parents who were there were talking about this problem and what are we doing about it. And it's not like it's a unique problem to Triton. We don't have the silver bullet. It is absolutely an incredible challenge when it can be pretty much odor-free and you blow it into your sweatshirt and you might not even know. And I had a lesson about, it looked like a thumb drive to me, but it's a charging vape. So it's, we have a lot to learn, but I think this is the first step.
So I don't want to prolong this, but I just so that we have been providing education for the teachers on this.
Absolutely.
So we did talk about this at our previous faculty meeting about keeping your eyes open for this to all teachers. And then we brought in all teachers that have computer labs in their classrooms, and we showed them the vape chargers, and we've caught kids. We have caught several students, and so they know. Right, some of them, we had a meeting with the senior class this morning after the presentation from CVS on opioid and drug use and vaping. We did have a meeting with the senior class saying, hey, this senior week is coming up. You will not go to the prom. You will not participate in senior week activities, and you will not walk. And I did that last year, and it still bothers me to this day that I didn't allow a student to walk. But if they're doing something that's going to harm themselves, I won't allow it. And, you know, we talked to them today, and some of the students were laughing when it came to vaping. They just don't get how dangerous it is. And it changes. It changes daily. Like one of my assistant principals caught a student today outside, and this was a whole new vaping device that I've never seen. It looked like something from Star Trek. I didn't even recognize. I said, I don't even know what it is. So it's constantly changing, and it's just something that if we don't get out in front of it, we're going to be chasing our tails. So.
Yeah.
Maureen?
Is there any thought to having this policy also in the middle school? Because as the parent of a middle schooler, I know that the vaping is a huge problem in the middle school right now.
I talk to Al
as well.
about it all the time. Yeah. He says he thinks, not necessarily in his middle school, but in the middle school principal circles that he's in, he says, and I don't want to speak for him because he's not here, but he thinks, and as well as the middle school principals that I know, that it's worse in middle schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the timeliness of this is because of senior
the
week and prom
senior week.
season and in all those events.
Yeah, that's true.
But I
Yeah.
think as
We're
far
gonna-
as
I think we talked before about having consistency in our policies and handbooks and things, and if this is a policy that we have, it should be a policy for,
the district
comes to
policy.
drugs and alcohol and
Period.
tobacco, it should
It's in
be
elementary as
district-
well.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
District
Absolutely.
District policy, not
Yeah,
just
I'm pretty sure it's J, which we haven't, J, which is the big student section, I'm pretty sure, which is coming up, one of our next sessions. So I believe this is part of J, which would be a formal review, and then absolutely, I know the MASC policy now, the model now has vaping in it, and that becomes a policy that's in every single handbook. Is there an issue at elementary school? I would be shocked if it wasn't an issue.
Right.
Like I said, you could walk into a computer lab, and a week ago, you could have brought me into the computer lab, and I would have said, "Why are people using USB drives? That's so 2014. All vapes, charging up, get ready to use." So,
Yep.
I may be the only one at the table, but I don't really know what vaping is. What is vape? I mean, I understand that it makes
So-
you high, I get that, but
Some
what
of
is
it
vape?
does. So there's all different types of vaping that you can do.
That's
So
short
the-
for vapor?
So it's just, it's vapors, so they, it was a safe alternative to tobacco use. That's what it was billed as. But now they're saying that it's 10 times worse than tobacco use. There's no real data. And I was talking to the students, I said, there's not going to be any real data until people start getting sick from vaping. And then they start, looking into why people are sick. I said, so don't be the guinea pig. Don't be the one that 15 years from now, you're the one who goes into the doctor's office and says, "Oh my God, this is what happened to you." And and what they're saying now is that you can go online, and I don't know how into it you want me to get, but you can go online and say, "I'm 21 years old," and you can get THC mailed to your house to put in your vape and bring it to school.
THC in a vapor form?
In a liquid
called a
form.
dab.
It's called a dab.
and it can be where cannabis in the 70s, a joint may have been 3 to 6% THC. Those dabs can be 70 to 90%.
70 to 90%.
Okay, I'll close my mouth now.
So you heard about e-cigarettes. So it started as e-cigarettes. If you smoke, this is a great alternative. It was, but now it's morphed into you can literally do any drug, nicotine. And again, people think it's safe. It's just cherry flavor. But the reality is to create the vapor, to create the liquid that creates the vapor, it's chemicals. So you're breathing the vapors of chemicals, and it's a vapor. So it's so fine that you're ingesting all of that. And like Tim said, they just don't know what they don't know yet. But we're pretty sure it's a problem.
Right, well, thank you. I mean, I trusted you that it was bad.
But they said when it gets to a certain temperature, because of this, I think about this all the time. I have kids at home too, and here, and I've talked about it. They said when it gets to a certain temperature, you're ingesting what is technically formaldehyde. So.
Dan?
So we hear that it's a problem, and then there was even a student report in the student newspaper about vaping and juuling.
Juuling's a brand, just so you know.
Do we know to what extent, do we have any data or understanding to what extent it is a problem? Do we have percentages? Is there any way to know?
I've asked students, may I say,
So I'm sorry, say the question again?
what percentage of
I'm
students are
trying to
using
figure out
vapes?
the magnitude of the problem here, because when we think about it, through the years, combating kids smoking cigarettes in schools or other kinds of things have been an issue. And I'm hearing about it at home. We're hearing about it at home too.
Well, everything I know is qualitative. I mean, it's from the sampling of students that I've talked to. So I can tell you what they've said. I can tell you what my assistant principals and head of guidance and my athletic director have talked to students and teachers. They'd say 80%. but not all, but see, now here you get into these qualifying levels.
Who's tried it?
You know,
Who's
who's
done it a
tried
few
it,
times?
who just takes, there are students that take vapes to school just to have them and they never use them. So, I mean, so you have students that are in possession of them and don't use them at all just so they look cool, you know. So, I mean, there's a whole, it's an onion. So.
Maureen?
I just want to make a comment. If this is something that we approve tonight, can I just ask that it's put out immediately to the community so parents know as we enter kind of spiral unit. It starts with tobacco. Actually, it starts with how to relieve stress and things that may trigger you to go towards drugs or alcohol or vaping. And then it talks about the impact of nicotine, and it really is a great kind of spiral for the kids. As they get older, they get more information. I was in 3 different classes, and it just so happened it was during that session that they were doing vaping. And one of the classes, I can say, was at the middle school. It was either 7th or 8th grade. I'm not sure exactly if it was 7th or 8th, but the kids were leaving the class still asking questions about vaping. So the earlier we can provide them with updated and accurate information, and they are hungry for it, then I think the better equipped they will be to prevent them from even trying it and going down that route. So I definitely would say education, education, and earlier on the better.
And parent education. Parents need to know what to look for.
Yes.
Again,
Grandparents.
I am have a different level of understanding than I did 7 days ago. So it is absolutely, it's about staying on top of it. I think Tim said this changes daily. There's a new device, the Juul is it's a $400 device. What it was when it came out. So there's all different shapes and varieties and options, and part of the biggest message is you don't know what you're smoking. You don't. If you buy it on the internet, you have no idea what you're putting in your body.
And they bill it as medical. That's the thing. It's billed as, this will help you with anxiety. This will help you with ADHD. This will help you with, this will help your, concentration. So, and that's what it's billed as. So
it's scary.
I mean, it's scary.
It is. So, Linda.
We had this discussion in one of the policy meetings. You have in here that they will be subject to a $100 fine. Have you deputized anyone to give out those fines?
So Chief Riley from Newbury was clarifying that, and I have to get the exact language, but there's actually something on the warrant. I don't know if it made it on. He was proposing language on the warrant for the Newbury Town meeting on April 30th. No, April 24th.
Yeah.
So I haven't talked to him again. Has he mentioned anything?
No, he is not.
Officer Lucy? But there was language that put further teeth. Apparently there's something voted, a bylaw back in the 70s that does give the authority.
Yes.
But again, that's easier said than done, and it's getting that structure in place. So there was some updated language that Chief Riley was putting on, and I'm waiting to hear if that made it on the warrant. I'm hoping it did. And it incorporates vapes. Yeah.
So we need a motion to approve this one-page summary of existing policy.
I'll make a motion to approve the one-page summary of existing policy as presented.
Thank you, Deb. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Maureen, is there any further discussion? All in favor?
I had a discussion
Linda?
on, we're making this a condition on a policy, right?
Yeah, this is just temporary. This is because of,
Do we have to say that in the motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the summary in front of us as a conditional policy.
Yes.
all right, that's even better.
And I'll second that.
All in favor? Thank you, unanimous.
Thank you very much. May I say one more thing? If I don't do this, I'm going to be in trouble with Madame, so.
Oh.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Is it
This
a
is the
free
light
trip?
version, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay, moving on to subcommittee reports, policy and advocacy.
We're going to approve, I don't have the,
Tonight is,
we're going to approve sections C, D, E, and F of the Triton Policy Manual as revised as a second and final reading.
right, so these, you approved these as a first reading last month.
Yes.
Do we have a second? Because I'm assuming you are making that as a motion.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Unanimous.
Okay, there's another question or comment or directive for Brian. For the policies that we just went over, have you spoken to Kim and David that they have to look at those policies to see if any changes need to be made?
We have not formally reviewed those yet, no. Those haven't been recommended yet.
No, what I'm saying is, come 2 weeks from now, Mike is going to be giving us what we have agreed to. I want to make sure before we agree in
Yes.
those meetings that they have looked at
Have a chance
those.
to review them, yes, yes,
That's,
Yes.
no, not these guys, but
That's right.
those two.
absolutely, yes.
All right, anything else, Linda?
Nope, that's it.
Thank you. All right, finance, Narissa?
I'm going to turn it over to Michelle so she can take us through the highlights of the 2 documents that we reviewed at our last meeting.
Great, thank you. Very briefly, I'm not going to bore you with these documents. They're certainly not exciting. But the first report is the FY17 audited financial statements. This is just the financial statements. This is not the management letter, which I actually will have a draft of that tomorrow. So nothing that we can really sink our teeth into, but certainly the figures for you. And I just wanted to point out 2 pages in this report. And if you have any other questions, I can certainly review those as well. But the first chart is on page 7 of the financial statements. And this is actually a history of our excess and deficiency account. But I also noticed that you actually have an incorrect version. The correction did come to me very late, so the report that got printed was the initial one. So our current estimated FY17 E&D is actually $299,000, not the $493,121 that's listed on the page. That figure was increased because the auditor included our electric credits into that fund balance, which really are not cash, so we couldn't count them towards our E&D balance. So our E&D will be certified at $299,000. We had a slight glitch in trying to get that certified, but I'm working with the DOR to get that resolved right now. But that is our history of E&D over the past few years. So we've gone from 606 in 2011 down to 299 in 2017. So it certainly shows how tight our budgets are running and how much of an excess we do not have in our reserves by any means. So the next page I just wanted to point out to you is page 12. It's a summary of all of our activities, statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. The first column is our general fund. It basically lists every single dollar that we receive in terms of revenues, every single dollar we send out in terms of expenditures, any transfers, and it comes down to our ending fund balance, which is also incorrect. The ending fund balance should be the 299, not the 593,000. And it breaks it down into general fund, which is our operating budgets, our stadium project, because that was considered a significant fund during FY17, and our non-major funds, such as our revolvings and our grants, are all lumped into that column. And so that's the total. I do want to mention, I mean, typically our budget runs in the $40 million range, but you'll notice the total revenues are $47 million. Our total expenditures were $48 million for general fund. That includes a figure which is titled MTRS on both the revenues and expenditures. That's actually the portion of our Mass Teachers Retirement System that the state pays on our behalf. So those funds never come through our district, but it is paid on our behalf to the Mass Teachers Retirement from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So if you have any other questions, that's about all I wanted to cover in there, because I will certainly bore you to death. And it is not very interesting.
Anybody have any questions? So, Michelle, you said you will be getting the management letter?
Yes, I'll see a draft of it tomorrow.
Okay. Because I think that's what...
That's what I find very interesting, because those are items we can correct, items that we can improve upon. So I have not even seen a draft yet to even know what type of items are included in that report yet.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
you.
OPEB 2?
Yes, I didn't know if we wanted to do them individually.
No.
So you have 2 KMS reports in front of you. One actually is titled Revised Actuarial Valuation for July 1, 2014. And the other report is Other Post-Employment Benefits for Actuarial Evaluation of 2016, and then with financial footnotes for GASB 45 and 74 for June 30th, 2017. The revised report for the 2014, when the actuarial firm was doing our report for the 2016-17 figures, they noticed that one of the calculations was wrong. So they had to reissue it. So I just wanted to point out one figure on this report on page 3. Our total OPEB unfunded liability was estimated as of July 1, 2014 at $401,991. They actually overstated that by almost $20 million. So I just wanted to make sure we had the correct report on in the file. That number is so high and so unrealistic anyways that it really doesn't make a difference to us.
About funding it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure we had that as a comparison. So if we turn to the next report dated July 2016 and as of June 2017, if you turn to page 3, that same 62 million that we had in July 14, that revised value, is now $67,605,827, about 2/3 of the way down on that chart to the July 1, 2016. So that is our actuarial accrued liability as of that date. We currently have $10,013 in our fund. Certainly not going to make a difference for us, but at least we have a fund established. And then on the page before, on page 2, there's a new GASB regulation that went into effect. There's all kinds of GASB statements constantly coming out. It confuses the average person. It confuses me as well. Not that I'm not the average person, but certainly in financial world, I don't understand it either. GASB 74 just has a lot more actuarial assumptions and future estimates, and that actually puts our total OPEB liability at $76,848,622. So that is the most recent. And they now have us at $10,088. We had a little more interest during the year. So it's growing very slowly, but not making a difference. At some point, we need to think if we're going to be able to fund some type of OPEB fund, but typically most municipalities do not do that until their pension liability is fully funded. So that is quite a number of years away still. So once we do that, we can probably put the $1 million we put into pensions into OPEB liability at that point.
think we're ways away from that.
Yes, we certainly are.
So just to add, so this is important because eventually in the financial statements, the full amount is going to show up. You saw it was an additional 7 million this year. So where we used to have a net standing or a net present, whatever the term is, net value, positive, it will eventually be that 67 in the million, or in the million in the negative. And again, that's not real dollars, but because of these OPEBs, not the OPEBs, but these GASB statements,
requirements.
it's a requirement that they show your actual liability. So it doesn't change anything in the way we function and operate, other than that becomes a very scary number. And in an audited statement that you used to be able to at least say, okay, I can find some pages that make sense.
So, even these days, the financial statements tend not to make sense.
Yes. We should say that we're looking at a new auditor too.
Yes, and also, the Finance Subcommittee is aware that we will be going out to bid for audit services sometime later this spring for the new fiscal year. So once we wrap up this audit, we most likely will have a new audit firm for next year to take a look at our financials, and I would expect our management letter would be much more substantial because a brand new set of eyes will see
Right.
a lot of things.
Not a bad thing.
Not a bad thing at all.
Other than that, I just wanted to add that the budget is extremely tight this year. So I'm sure we're going to be having discussions on that in the coming months. There is potentially a little bit of relief coming through supplemental budgets from the state, at least to bring our circuit breaker reimbursements up, hopefully to the realm of where we normally are. But you know, this year has been tough.
It's been about 90,000 and change additional circuit breaker monies that we'll get in the current year.
Yes, plus Michelle just told me we were audited.
Yes, we had a circuit breaker audit earlier this year, and we should be getting, I don't remember the exact figure, I think it was in the $20,000 range, so that should be coming to us as well.
Let's hope.
Yes.
Every little bit helps,
Yes.
absolutely. Anything else, Narissa?
No, that was it.
Okay. Thank you. Personnel and negotiations, we are,
Need to motion those?
Yeah, you need to
Motion
receive and
those?
file those.
oh.
I make a motion to receive and file the FY17 audited financial statements.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Sorry,
Ma-
I didn't see the action.
I'll make a motion to receive and file the OPEB revised actuarial valuation report from July 1, 2014.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you again.
And I'll make a motion to receive and file the OPEB actuarial valuation report July 1, 2018 with financial disclosures as of June 30th, 2017.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to personnel and negotiations, we are continuing to review the job descriptions, and our next meeting is May 1st. That's pretty much, can't think of anything else that's going on.
I should note that because of the installation of cameras, surveillance cameras, there's a requirement to bargain with any collective bargain associations. So we did give notice to all 5 associations. I provided notice just saying, this is our intention. We don't have to do anything specific, but we are required to offer to impact bargain. So at this time, the Teachers Association has taken us up on that. I'll be having a first meeting to just have a first discussion following the vacation on the Monday. And certainly, it would be up to, if it's anything beyond a discussion, it would be up to the PNN and then ultimately the committee to complete the actual negotiations.
Anybody have any questions regarding that? Okay. Our next meeting is May 9th here in the library at 7 p.m.
No.
May 16th, you're right. Thank you, we didn't change it on this
Oh, we didn't
agenda.
change it on
Thank
the
you for
agenda.
catching that, Deb. May 16th, here in the library at 7 p.m. Do we have a motion to adjourn? I'll make a motion. Thank you, Linda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Good night, everyone.